I am very happy to introduce Hadi. Hadi's not ready yet. Just add him to the stream randomly. Hi, Hadi.
Hello. Is
Hadi,
it live? Am I on?
yes. Is this thing on?
Is this thing on?
I'm really happy to introduce Hadi as the first speaker of day 2. Hadi is a very good speaker. He is the author of many of the code samples we actually use in the IntelliJ IDEA code sample project. He's probably the reason why Kotlin is so popular. And he's also my boss, so he doesn't believe anything I say when I say nice things about him. I did warn you I was going to say nice things, and you weren't.
Yeah. And you also kind of gave me a heads up. I'm not being sarcastic, okay? it's like the story of my life with my kids. When I say a compliment to them, they're like, "What have I done wrong this time?" So yeah, thank you. So it's great being here. This is my first talk of the year, if we can call this a talk.
Are you dissing our conference?
No, I'm just staring at a screen right now. Hi, everyone. I'm great that all of you could join me on this very early, dull morning. Well, it's dull a little bit here in Spain where I am. I'm at the south of Spain, and I could say to you that I'm coming to you from sunny Spain, but no, apparently today they decided it needs to be dull and cloudy. But It's okay. That means that it doesn't shine through the window, and you won't see my face with all that wonderful sunshine that I normally get.
You're not making any friends there. Most of the rest of the world doesn't have sun at all.
Yeah, no, don't worry about that. Climate change will fix that for a little. Well, never mind. Okay, so do I start, Trisha?
Yes, before you started, I wanted to say one more observation. You gave me this T-shirt back in 2013. You gave it to me at Java Zone before I started working for JetBrains. So you did a very long, slow recruitment process on me, and I'm wearing it again today. That's all I wanted to say. Right.
Yep. No, go ahead.
This is totally not rehearsed, as you can tell. Great. I will let you get on with it. I will add your screen to the stream and drop off. I'll be asking you questions at the end of the session. Good luck and goodbye.
Thank you. And a couple of disclaimers. First of all, if this goes wrong, this is a live session, right? If it goes wrong, please don't worry. And also, please don't expect me to record it for you and upload it later on. I'm sorry. It's a live session. It's gone wrong. It's gone wrong. The good news is that I've given talks like this before. They're all on YouTube. And if anything is horribly bad here, you can just look up the other ones that are pretty decent. If I can say so myself, which I can, I just did. Also, something that Trisha pointed out, she said that every time she has watched one of my talks, she has actually picked up something new. So I kind of consider that kind of like a compliment in the sense of, if you've ever watched Monty Python's Life of Brian, you always pick up something new every time, no matter how many times you watch it. So yes, and yeah, there you go. I don't even need to do a new version of the talk. You could just keep watching the other one and pick up something new. I mean, you're bound to pick up something. But anyway, as I always say, I'm going to set my bar very, very low. If you learn one thing, that's worth 45 minutes of your time, right? It could be something life-changing. And talking about life-changing, we've had a change. This is the change, as you can see. This is the new welcome screen in IntelliJ IDEA. You know, that thing that you try and avoid as much as possible. This is it. We've made it easier to, or more clearer or bigger to search. So I could just type website and see everything that's website. But there's a couple of things on the left-hand side which are kind of nice. One of them is this thing called Learn IntelliJ IDEA. Now, I don't know how many of you have actually ever clicked on this. Don't be scared to do click on it. And if you click on Start Learning, what that's going to do is open up IntelliJ IDEA for you. It would be very strange if it opened up something else, wouldn't it? Hadi? Yes, mental note. And what it does is essentially give you a bunch of steps that you can go through. So I can click on context actions, and it will show me what it's about to do. It tells me, like in many cases, IntelliJ IDEA can guess your intention or propose a fix for a warning or error. Let's invoke one, and it will guide you step by step. So I will say Alt-Enter. You can see that it completes it here, and it says now apply the safe delete redundant. So I would apply the safe delete redundant, and then it tells you what it has done, and so on and so forth. And you can go step by step through this live interaction with the IDE, and it's showing you everything that the IDE can do, right? So Thank you. Now all you have to do, this is a hands-on lab, so you could just all open up your IDs and click on Learn IntelliJ IDEA. Bye-bye. No. Okay, never mind. Now, another couple of other things. We're going to open up our project here. And that welcome screen is actually nice. Why is it nice? Because you get access to all that wonderful recent projects. And you can actually see those recent projects. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with a Keymap by default. But if you click on Keymap and you search for Manage Projects, I have assigned the Keymap to it, which is Shift Command P. Now, why did I assign that? Because that's the only keyboard shortcut that's available right now after everything else has been taken by IntelliJ. But also the P stands for projects, and Shift Command M was taken. So here, if I press Shift Command P, you can see that I basically kind of get that same feel that I did on the welcome screen, and I can essentially open up any recent projects. So, it's actually quite nice because it lets you go back to recent projects in a quick way. Now, let's start with something very, very simple, that Search Everywhere, which I always start with. And I'm not going to go through it all. You know basically what Search Everywhere does. You know what it does? It searches absolutely everywhere. But there's a couple of things that people still don't know. And one of them is that you can actually do other things other than search. If you press the command, you can actually change things. So for example, I go to System, and from System, I can modify anything. You don't have to go to Preferences. I can click on Plugins. From Plugins, I can see all of, well, not pugs. That's a type of dog. Plugins, I can see all of my different plugins, switch them on and off. And now generally, I can say that for quite a few number of plugins, you don't have to restart IntelliJ IDEA every time you switch them on and off, which is kind of nice. The other thing that we've added to Search Everywhere is this concept of searching in Git. So if I have my Git repository in my project, I can also look for things on here. Now, notice that when I do a home, it says no GIF refs found. And you're like, what does that mean? Is that GIFs? Because I read GIF there. I don't know why I read Git. Don't know why I read GIF. But anyway, so notice that there's a little dot here with the filter. And what you want to do is, if you end up with that situation, just make sure that you've got the right filters selected, or you could have just hit all. And now it will provide you with more insight, right? So now what I'm doing is I'm actually being able to search through my Git commit messages and go to a specific one, and it will show it up for me inside the Git log and who it was, and get quick access in that, right? So it's, again, one step less that you have to do if you want to search for something in Git history. If you're also interested in doing maths operations, don't launch the calculator, just write 2 + 20 plus 400, and that gives you 420 divided by 345 times whatever. Okay, gone too far, and that gives you the result, which you can also copy to clipboard. It also does currency convert. No, it doesn't do currency conversion, but that actually should be good. In fact, what we should add is kilometers to miles and all of that, imperial to non-imperial, to the rest of the world, imperial to the rest of the world conversions in there. That's a good idea. Trisha, I don't know if you're in the background. We should log that as a feature request. Now, this is Search Everywhere. Another thing that Search Everywhere is cool about is that it's not only that you have Search Everywhere in the Search Everywhere, but in IntelliJ, you can search everywhere, literally everywhere. And don't forget that. So if I'm in the project window and I can come and say, for example, QC, that's going to allow me to search for query completion, and in fact using camel case. So you can see at the top here that I'm using QC, and it's using camel case to search everywhere. And this essentially works in any tool window that you have. Anywhere you can search everywhere, and of course you can use Search Everywhere to search everywhere. And enough with Search Everywhere, let's talk about Run Anything, because anything is better than everywhere. Now with anything, Run Anything, if you press double control, what that's going to do is allow you to run your project or whatever it is that you're doing from the command line, so to speak, or from this dialog box. And if you have a run configuration, excuse me, if you have a run configuration, you could just type the name of that run configuration. For example, I don't know, if I have like data type rendering, so that's a run configuration, I can hit enter, and that would basically run the data type rendering example for me. But in addition to that, this is the first time I've compiled, so it's a little bit slower. In addition to that, you can also, if your project is Gradle or Maven, you can use Gradle or Maven. And notice that it says It shows you even an icon. And for example, if I write Gradle, it gives me a list of all of the Gradle syntax options, and I can run anything. If I run Maven, type Maven, I can do Maven clean, which I will not do at this point in time. So it allows you to run Maven task, Gradle task, run configurations. And the cool thing is that once you run something, you double click it, it's already there. So you can easily just run that. This is very useful if you have a multi-module project with lots of different things, or you're running a whole bunch of different unit tests to be able to, return to that specific one that you want to run. In addition to the search everywhere, and run anything, there is also one of my favorite keyboard shortcuts in IntelliJ IDEA, which is Shift Command A, which is essentially search everywhere, but tabbed along to actions. And this is very, very cool because it essentially allows you to run any action without having to remember the keyboard shortcut if you actually don't like remembering keyboard shortcuts. So if I say move, it will show me anything that is related to move, whether it's a caret, whether it's a refactoring, whatever it is. If I say, for example, refactor, it will show me the refactoring options, and I can say refactor this, and it would show me the refactor this menu. If you do not know how to find something, use Shift Command A and just type it. And the reverse of that, sometimes if you don't know what a keyboard shortcut is mapping to, don't just randomly execute things. You can come here and put the keystroke in Keymap. So click on this little icon here, and let's say if I say Command O, it will show me what things are being mapped to Command O. Okay, and escape obviously shows me everything that's mapped to escape. Last but not least, in terms of navigating menus and actions, one thing that is also useful is the Quicklist. So if you go to Quicklist, that other thing that you probably never look at, this is quite nice in allowing you to create your own quick list with specific things that you use yourself. So for example, if I were to make a quick list for around running, I wouldn't do something around running because we've already got a bunch of actions for running, but I could say, okay, run configurations for template new projects, for instance. And then I could go back to my Keymap and assign a Keymap shortcut to this quick list, and then it would just pop up. So for instance, in the deployment one, if we go back to deployment and we say to Keymap, we say deployment, we can see that we've got a quick list over here, and I could add a keyboard shortcut, which is let's play that. What is that thing? Twister, no? With our keyboard, with our keys, Shift, Control, Alt, Command, W. That's not taken. There you go. Shift, Control. Now let's remember that. Shift, Control, everything. Let's just press every keyboard shortcut that there is and figure out if we can get this to pop up. There you go. Whoa, awesome. Now I got to remember why things go weird when I press that 5 keys combination. So that is also kind of nice to allow you to navigate quickly across things. Now let's move on quickly. Favorites, that other thing you probably never open, right? The Command F, Command 2, or just Shift Command Favorite, Shift Command Alt, Shift Command A and favorites. This shows you a bunch of favorites. Now you say, okay, big deal. It shows me bookmarks, it shows me code samples, etc., which is the actual project. Now the thing about this is the following: in that I could actually create my own group of favorites. So for instance, if I were to say bad code examples, right? And then inside this bad code examples, I could actually, add a specific example to this favorite. So for instance, I could come to this file that we have open, and if I press Shift Command F, not Shift Command F, yeah, if I, hold on a second, my keyboard mapping has been messed up, and now I've gone into full screen. That's fine. Add to favorites. Add to favorites. Oh, other command. Okay, never mind. Right. There you go. Add to favorites. I can now add it to a new list, or I could add it to bad code examples. And then as I see here, it's expanded, and I can see grouping of my files in a specific category, which is kind of interesting if you are doing, for example, an examination of your code base and you want to group specific files together. This comes in handy. Now, in terms of files, if this is nice for navigation, you can also, of course, set a bookmark. So for instance, I just press F3 here, and it's adding the different bookmarks. I can use mnemonics to add bookmarks, which is just Shift, Control, and the number. And I can then see all of these entries over here. So I can navigate to the different ones, and you just press the same number, and it just appears and disappears. And then, of course, if you want to set breakpoints, you can set breakpoint book favorites as well. So kind of useful. I use it quite a bit when I'm trying to understand a little bit the code base and I want to focus on a bunch of different files. Now, and I'm going to say something about tabs, but we'll take a look at that in a moment. But let's look at recent files as well. Now, recent files here, you got to forgive my little size of window here because I've put the system font very, very large so that you see it properly and some things come out strange. So recent files, Command E is very, very helpful. Recent files basically shows you all of the recent files you've been to, as well as giving you access to all of the different tool windows. So for instance, if I open up the structure, that's going to give me access to the structure without me having to know the keyboard shortcut for that. Now, Shift Command E, before, if you were to press Shift Command E, that would give you recent edited files. That behavior has been changed. I think it was last year or a little bit earlier than that. And now if you want to see the recent change to only, as you can see here, it says press Command E again. And this is a common pattern that we have. If you press the keyboard shortcut, the same keyboard shortcut in a dialog, it slightly changes that behavior. So in this case, I'm going to press Command E again, and it's going to show me the recent edited files, right? You got a little icon here, which maybe you didn't know about, but what that does is open it up in a second tab as opposed, sorry, in a split window as opposed to the actual window itself. Now, if you want to go to a line number, you can also use the double shift. And if I'm on files or Shift Command F and then, sorry, Shift Command O, and I say, for example, GSB 10, that will go to the file GSB, which is generate switch branches based on camel case, and 10 will take me to that specific line number. So that's another quick way of navigating through files. And talking about navigating through files, one thing that we've enabled is there was the option here that before it says auto scroll to source and auto scroll from source. That has kind of vanished, and now you can do this enable preview tab. Now, what does this enable preview tab do? Well, essentially, I've got it enabled, and then what happens is that you can see I've disabled it, and I can go through my different files in the project view. Let's close the favorite so that we see this better, and see that nothing actually happens. Now, if I enable it, what's going to happen is that it's going to change the actual displayed file each time I navigate. Now, I personally, I don't like this behavior, so I have it disabled. But this works well with tabs if tabs are your thing. Tabs are not my thing, but if tabs are your thing, you can do that. And the behavior is a little bit different. So if we go to editor tabs and we put them at the top, for instance, you can see that there is the enable previews tab over here. So now what happens is that you see that this one is in cursive or italics. And as I navigate, you see that it's using that same tab to show me the preview. Okay. Now, I don't kind of like doing that the way that I do it, and I don't like tabs either. So the way that I do it essentially is I've got that disabled. If I want to see something, I can hit enter, and then that will take me to the focus of the file. If I just want to see the file without editing it, I can, well, F4 should have done that, but now it's defaulting to the same behavior. Press Command 1 always to get back to your project view. One interesting thing is if you're using things like recent files and you go to query completion, how do you know where this is in your project view? That's where I add another key map. So if you come to key maps and we go to select in project view, select project of view in project. Oh, naming these things. select in project, somewhere there. Let me actually look it up by keyboard mapping. There you go, select file in project view. So I've assigned the keyboard map Control-Alt-L to select in project view. That doesn't come by default. So what this means is that if I'm in query completion and I press Control-Alt-L, that will immediately highlight it for me in the project view, which is kind of nice. So I prefer that type of navigation. Now, a few more things in terms of navigation. We can click on a single symbol, for example, Command B, and it will show us not only navigate to it, but it can also show us all of the usages, which is kind of nice. So here I can see the usages. That goes to a declaration. From the declaration, I can actually navigate to the usages, which is everywhere that is being used. If you want to navigate back and forth, of course, you have the command left square brackets or command right square brackets. Obviously, I'm using Windows. At the bottom here, you can see the mapping for Windows. Sorry, I'm using Mac OS. At the bottom, you can see the mapping for Windows and Linux. But if you want to also look at your recent locations, that's one of the things that has changed, where I said that we've now replaced the Shift Command E keyboard mapping. We've replaced the recently changed files to recent locations. And recent locations essentially is showing me all of the recent locations I've been to, which can be in the same file or they can be in different files, as can be seen here. So you can see that the first ones are the same file and then different files. Now, if I want to do the recently changed locations, much the same way as we saw previously, use the same keyboard shortcut in the dialog box to get the recently changed locations. And here we can see that it goes only to the places that I have recently changed. And it gives you a nice breadcrumb view as well of where you are in your project. But of course, at any time in your project, you could just press Control-Alt-L, and that will take you to the actual file in your project view. Now, one last thing in terms of navigating and finding things in source code. Shift Command F allows me to find things in files. Now, we all know that. That's not how we should be doing things. And if we want to, like, you generally want to be able to navigate to things or see the usages, etc. But sometimes if you want to do a search, you can do a search, obviously. So, for example, I do move, and then it shows me all of the entries for move. Now, if I open this up in a tool window, and the keyboard shortcut would be Command Enter as shown, right? Now it shows me a list of entries that I have recently searched for. Now, why is this useful? Because if I go back to searching for something and you click on scope, you can actually limit that down to the previous search results. So you don't have to go through the same process again. You can say, look, I searched for something. Now I want to limit the search down to the results that I previously got, because I searched for something, I played with something, I touched something. Now I want to go back and look at other things, and it will limit that scope to essentially everything that has been shown in the tool window here. Okay, which is also very useful. Right, now that's enough of navigation. Let's take a look a little bit about appearance. What is appearance, Hadi? I don't know. It's when you say appearance in the wrong way. Right, so let's go to appearances. Plugins, it's all about appearances. For the record, I put on cologne today. I wanted to appear well over YouTube. So plugins, if I go to themes, we can see that we have in the marketplace a whole bunch of themes. So this is something that we added a couple of years ago, I think, and we have the Dracula theme, which is kind of like Darkula, but it's actually spelt as Dracula. Hyper B. I have not looked through these themes for a while. I should actually start looking at these themes. Xcode Dark theme, nice. So if you want to change the appearance of your IDE, and remember, this isn't just about color. This is about appearances of even the way the buttons are rendered, the toolbars, everything. You can look through all of the different themes that are available. Now, out of the box, of course, we have support for some themes as well. As you know, you can see in appearance, I have IntelliJ Light, Mac OS Light, High Contrast, Darkula, or sync with OS. Now, if you're one of these people that has light themes in the morning and dark themes at night, or the other way around, I don't know how they do it, and your OS does that for you, you can now enable that in IntelliJ. And depending on when you use IntelliJ, it will basically switch. Personally, I'm back to kind of the light thing. I don't know if it's my eyesight or what it is, but I like to see some light. Okay. Now, maximizing the editor. A lot of times when you come to the editor, this isn't what you want to see, right? You don't want to see my tiny little bit of screen where I can edit some code. Shift Command F12 maximizes the editor. Shift Command F12 toggling back and forth. You can now access all of your different tool windows without having to open and close them individually. And you can maximize the editor screen. If you really want to get in the zone, then I recommend that you switch off Twitter, Slack, and every other tool that you have that is basically drowning you in notifications. Once you do that, then you can also enter the Zen mode. And what this does is basically make it, it just takes away everything else. Now, the one cool thing about the Zen mode is that if you hit configure gutter buttons, you can actually show the gutter buttons. So that means that if I have like a run or a test, I can still access that if I'm not familiar with the shortcut and see that. And I can still see information about the code without losing all of that information just because I'm in Zen mode. So that is very nice to have the gutter buttons enabled in Zen mode. There's another mode that we also have, which is called the reader mode. Now notice how we've got the little comments and no docs here, but if I click on Command B to go to string, notice this nice little layout that we have. This is called the reader mode. And the reader mode does a whole bunch of things like make the font bigger. It could increase the spacing. It renders nicely the data, the docs. So if I press Shift Command Q, not Shift Command Q, do not press Shift Command Q, Control Alt Q, sorry. It will show me the actual kind of docs, the way they're written in source code, and it will toggle it now to a nicer format for me. This is very, very nice in reader mode. And if you go to reader mode here, you can see all of the different options that you have available when you are just reading code. And you know what they say, we should spend more time reading code than writing code. Or don't they say that? Or they say you shouldn't spend a lot of time reading code. You shouldn't spend it. Never mind. Right. Editing. Let's go to editing. See, the great thing about doing these is that it doesn't matter even if I make an attempt at being humorous. I'm just going to all assume that you're laughing at my jokes because I can't hear you. So I'm just, yes, and you're laughing with me. Yes, you're laughing with me. Now, templates. Templates, I'm not going to go through. Templates, you probably already know. They've been around since decades. Or sometimes known as code snippets. One cool thing that people used to request and we finally added is support. In the case of file templates, we've added support for multiple file generations. So for instance, if I click now controller, let's say that I want to create a model view controller kind of template where I generate a model, a view, and a controller. What I can do is, enter this one and say, for example, this is a Java file, and then enter whatever I want here. I don't know, public void main, whatever. Well, it would be a home controller, public home controller. I don't really write Java. So, and then what I can add here is click on add child template. And then as part of that template, I can generate multiple files. And this comes in really useful for some folks where they want to try and actually have multiple files generated by a single template. Now, the templates, of course, if you're not familiar, make sure that you check out the postfix templates, etc. When editing code as well, we've got the expand, shrink selection on the text. Remember that if you want to select the entire line, just go to the cursor where there's nothing and then hit Alt up to get the entire line selected. Now, when you want to move code around as well, you can just use Shift Command and up and down arrows to move code around. And when you want to format code, you can also just get it formatted quickly by pressing Alt Command L, and that will reformat your code. Now, talking about code formatting, if you're extremely bored in your life, what you can do is go to code formatting over here, code style, Java, and then sit through this. Now, personally, I think probably making some barbecues is more entertaining than this. But the point is that we do want our code formatted and we want it in a specific way. But this doesn't give me much insight and it doesn't allow me to have any kind of context beyond the sample that is being shown in the little side here, which I can't seem to expand. Now, what you can do is select a piece of code. So for example, I can select this code. And then if I hit Alt-Enter, I say adjust code settings, it will automatically pick up everything that is applicable to that specific code and allow me to then modify that. And you can actually see the results as you're doing it live as well, right? So I can see how that works and then I'll save it. And this is a gradual thing, you know, it's kind of like refactoring. You don't say, I'm going to sit down today and refactor the entire project. No, you do it gradually. So as you start the project, as you want to standardize on code styles, you want to do this. And once you got it done, then you can export it, you can reuse it. And talking about exporting, note that we do support editor config, both for settings and code styles and things. So you can essentially just save that to a file in your IDEA folder and then just use that. Okay, let's move on. Now, let me show you one other thing that I still sometimes forget and do by hand. If I come here and I'm splitting up these strings and I want to join them, don't do something like this because that's a lot of pain. What you can actually do is press Shift, Control, J, and that is going to join them for you. Okay, so that's the opposite of splitting up strings. And in terms of carets, so if you want to have carets, you can just basically place carets everywhere you want. So for example, here, and then just start typing there. If you want to select a word multiple times, for example, B, you can just go on the word in particular, and then just continuously press Control G until you get all of the instances that you want highlighted. And if you want to get them all highlighted, then you would press Control Command G, and that will get all of the instances highlighted. Now, this is great. And sometimes you want to use multiple cursors. What you should never use multiple cursors for is refactoring. Like very rarely would I say, yes, of course, you want to refactor, use search and replace or multiple cursors. No, don't. There's tons of refactoring built in IntelliJ IDEA. And you know what? I really hope you're sitting down because this might come as a shock. There are more refactorings than just rename. I know rename is very popular, but there are more refactorings. But talking about rename, one thing that we've done is kind of cool. So let's say, for instance, let's go to something that we want to rename. Let's find something, I don't know. Let's go to, for example, no, not location. String refactoring. Oh, let's see. Where did I have that nicely? Hippie completion. There you go. So I want to do this renaming, and I can press Command Shift F6 to do the renaming. Now, notice that this little icon, inlays icons popped up, and you can also navigate to it using the keyboard shortcut that tells you, which is Alt-Shift-O on Mac. And what we do is this is going to give you the rename comments and strings and text occurrences, right? So oftentimes in IntelliJ, when you want to rename something, then it comes up with this window and says, hey, do you want to refactor this? And do you want me to search across all your strings? And then you're going to say, oh, no, don't refactor my strings because sometimes it doesn't make sense to refactor strings. Now you don't have to have that refactor window. You can basically just do it here and say, yeah, I want comments and strings, or no, I don't want text occurrences, and do the renaming there, and IntelliJ IDEA will do it for you. Another cool thing with refactoring is, for instance, the extracting functional parameter refactoring, which is kind of nice, especially if you're still not very well versed in functional programming. IntelliJ IDEA can help you actually create some functions and teach you a little bit. So I can say introduce functional parameter, and I can say by function, operation function, for instance. I'm no good at naming. And here it will introduce the concept for you. It will a little bit teach you as well how to actually pass in a function and create a higher order function in Java, for instance. And then we've also added some improvements to extract method. So here, let's go to extract method and then say that I want to select these lines of code and I want to extract this. I could just say, just not minimize my IntelliJ, Control T, and then I've got move extract function, sorry, extract method. And it will again make it nicer for me to extract, a little less a little more user friendly, and I can press the gear button to say annotate, etc. So it's already becoming a little bit smarter in that sense, and it's not taking you through this long dialog box of like saying, okay, now what do you want to do? No, let's just assume some defaults. You do it for me, and then if I'm not happy, I can go ahead and change it. Now, let's move on to analysis. Analysis is important. One thing that we've changed again with IntelliJ IDEA, you can see the little tick box here. We've always had that basically is looking through your code. As you see when I'm navigating, you can see that it's essentially looking at the code and it's finding all of the issues. And I could navigate to these issues. I can click on them and I will see them at the bottom of all of the different issues that my file in particular has. But I can also navigate to them using F2 and Shift F2. This will take me through each of these ones, and then if there's a corresponding inspection, I can highlight that inspection and it will show it to me. Now, this is kind of nice. And what other thing that we've added now is that, for instance, if we go to Planet Java, and let's say that I'm going to make this private. Okay, now what happens is that IntelliJ highlights this related problem. There's technically nothing wrong with this refactoring, right? I mean, I've made my constructor private for whatever reason. However, it says there's a related problem. What's that related problem? It says you're not going to be able to do that because you're creating an instance of it and it's not going to be valid. So it will detect, it's going to inspect, obviously, not just that file, but all of the issues that are happening across your project. And of course, all of these inspections are the smart things that we are trying to build in and folks are working on and analyzing your code base, and you can switch them on and off, etc. If you want to do your own inspections, you can build a plugin, or you can use something similar to it, which is structural search, which I love talking about, especially now that we have it even for Kotlin. And here is the cool thing about a structural search. So I'm just writing code here. I'm just writing Java code. And then I say a placeholder. If you find some code, I don't care what that code is, I'm going to call it a placeholder. And then if I have catch, exception, E, and I have the full editor here, E, get message, tell me that this is a horrible code. It's basically searching for some code, and it says, yep, I found your code, and this isn't the type of code that you should be writing. Now, let's go back to that search structurally, and I can even make this another piece of placeholder, like bad management. Now, find, and it will map anything that has that style of code. So you can see here that I have bad management because it's throwing a new exception or whatever. Right? Top point being, I don't want to catch top level exception. Now, if I do replace structurally, replace, what this will allow me to do is essentially replace that code. So in this case, I could just say, replace that code with code, right? So if I find that, I can now say replace, and then I say replace selected, and it's basically going to just replace the selected and then go so on and so forth. And this is great, but it's proactive. Remember that you can actually do this as part of inspections as well. So structural search, there is somewhere there. Search structurally. Okay, well, it's somewhere there. I'll find it and probably won't do a video about it, but you can look it up. There's somewhere that you can actually add a structural search as an inspection, and then it will highlight it at all times. So you don't have to do it proactively. And talking about inspections, obviously we inspected a lot of things. Look at this. We were inspecting my name. This was the old days when you actually generated a template with information there. Now we've even enhanced the spell checker with a grammar checker. So if you go and look up grammar, there you go. You see that I can now add a whole bunch of files to be checked for grammar. So right now, by default, it only adds Markdown, but let's enable Java, right? Let's enable Java and see what happens. If I now go to, for instance, let's look up a symbol, Java 10 symbols. Java 10 inspections, right? I can see that, look at this, inside an actual comment in my code, it's detecting a grammar mistake. Note that we can use the diamond operator and the type is moved right. And the type is moved right. That's not an Oxford comma, but it's a comma, and it's an important comma. And if we enable this in our different types of files, and I don't know why Kotlin isn't there, we need Kotlin, people, then you will get the grammar checks also in your code base, which again is very, very nice. Now, query completion. If you've ever worked with IntelliJ IDEA, you know that we have excellent support for database, and this is part of what we call language injections, right? I've added a source here, so basically my database has access to the source, to the DDL information, and it can give me completion. I can get this in many places, right? If I go, for instance, to JSON, or let's say the regular expressions, here you can see that this is just a string, but using this concept of language injection, which has been around forever, I say that this is now a regular expression. It will highlight it for me and parse it to me as a regular expression. And if I type something wrong, which we all do when we write regular expressions, there is that problem that it will highlight. And I can even check regular expressions. So here I can, for instance, type in a number and it's correct. And if I type something else, it's not matching. And of course, the JSON stuff, which is awesome as well. So we have Alt Enter, inject language reference, JSON. I never get tired of using this. Alt Enter, edit JSON fragment, and this is how you write JSON. Okay, don't go doing that manually. Okay. Now, data flow analysis. I believe that my colleague Tagir was talking a little bit about data flow analysis yesterday. I recommend that you watch the session, which was great. But data flow analysis is really, really cool in that basically allows you to understand how data analysis is flowing. So let's click, for example, data analysis flow here, and let's take a look at this date get month. Now, if I select this and I press information to show me the type, it's going to say to me int, right? Which is nice. If I put my cursor there, it says to me, what do you want to know? I want to know, for example, over here, that's a Boolean. Okay, great, that's fine. Now let's go over here, for instance, and do the same thing. I'm going to press Shift Command P and I say, yes, I want to get date month. It says int, but now watch, Shift Command P again, Shift Control P, sorry, and it tells me the actual value. It is telling me the actual value and is doing it based on data flow analysis. And data flow is fantastic for that because it essentially allows you to go through the code base and understand what type of data is coming in a specific point. And that information has now been even combined with debugging to make it even more solid, right? Because it's, again, please look up the session by Tagir yesterday about data flow analysis and how that works for more information about that. But it is really, really good tool to understand the flow of your data. Instead of you mentally sitting there and saying, okay, well, this is 12, and now if it goes there, that it will match the equals to 2, and how and so forth. And of course, you can get, for example, data flow. Let's go to data flow, and I can say select here, and the ID and say data flow from here or to here, and it's showing me all of the places that this data is going to flow to. So it says this is all of the functions or the properties or the parameters that this data is going to be flowing to. Now, debugging. Yesterday, again, my colleague Igor had a fantastic session on debugging. Really, really great. And I'm not going to go into too much details because he already showed things like the stream debugger, which is really fantastic, which allows you to basically set a breakpoint here, and then I'm going to debug this, and this should be, all right, let's do that properly. Multi-line expressions. Let's set a debug point here, and let's debug this. Now that's going to do the rendering. Let's debug the right one. So you can see that I get information there. And then if I hit the stream debugger, it's going to show me information about the actual parts of the stream, which is really, really cool. Okay, I recommend you watch that talk. We've added this inline hints that you know that we had before. You can, of course, add your own watches. If I were to come here and say new watch, this would allow me to add a new watch. For example, I don't know, words, and then I don't know, whatever. Here, let's do it on another example that I have. Let's go to customer Java, and let's see what is being used here. So let's say, for example, data rendering, right? So over here, I can add a watch here that is, for example, full name. So let's run this. Let's debug this. And you can see that I have, I can come over here and say, I want to add a new watch. And I'll say first name plus last name, right? Now, this is always going to be there, and it's going to always show me that. But it would be nice to get it over here. And I can do that by basically saying create renderer, not create renderer over here. And actually, it should allow me to, oh, sorry, add as inline watch. And I'll say, hold on a second. Add as inline watch. So I can say first name plus last name. And that should now add me that watch as inline as well. So I can basically customize the inlines as I have them. And then if you ever want to remove them, you can also remove them. Obviously, you can't remove the default ones, but the rest of them you can. Again, highly recommend you watch that talk. We've got only a few minutes left, so I'm going to just wrap up with a few other honorable mentions. Code with me, which is the ability to now code. You can, sure, code with me is the ability to now code. What kind of language am I speaking? Code with me. That allows you to actually do pair programming with others. There's going to be a session on that by my colleague Kirill, and he's going to be covering that, so I won't be showing it today. Shared indexes is a feature that we've added to IntelliJ IDEA, which allows you to basically make indexing a little bit faster. If you click on shared indexes, essentially what it's going to do is across the projects, and in addition to the common libraries that are being used in the JDKs, we're going to essentially be indexing these once and then being shared across the projects. And that's going to drastically cut down the indexing time for you to work on your projects. If you are working with Gradle or Maven and you use dependencies, make sure you check out the packages plugin, which is an awesome little tool that we've created, which allows you to basically add, get updates, see all of the different packages you have. So for instance, if I want to install a package, I can hit Ktor, that will find me Ktor, and I can say, for instance, add it to compile or add it to implementation or runtime or whatever, and it will add that for me. It will also highlight any versions that need updating. So you can see here that it says, for example, Jupyter has been updated to 5801 M1. Do you want to actually perform the update? It gives you information about the products as well. So the project, the GitHub pages, etc. Make sure you check that out. Then let's now just quickly switch over to another project, which I want to show you some things in payment. So if you're doing any kind of development that involves running services, etc., whether they're Docker, whether they're your self-contained services, etc., or based on Jar or Tomcat or whatever, I recommend you check out the services tab, which is very, very cool in that it allows you to actually add your services, right? So let's go ahead over here and run something. So for instance, I'm going to go to my payments. It's a Ktor application, and I'm going to run this. So let's go ahead and run it. And then what this is going to do is essentially run that HTTP server. And what it will now allow me to do in the services view is see all of the different applications running, right? So I can now come here and say run configuration type, or I can add it to run configuration type, and I'll say Gradle. And then inside the Gradle one, I have all of my different runs. So I can now run that. And if I have a Docker configuration, I can say a Docker connection and connect to my Docker instance. And if I have a container, then you see it will show me all of my containers, and I can start running all of the different containers. And this gives me a wonderful view of all of the services that I'm running. So use the services if you're doing that kind of development. Also, if you're doing any kind of web development, remember that we've got support for HTTP files to test. So I can just hit run localhost, test from here a few new additions that we've added, which is copy take that and convert it to a command line URL so that you can run with curl. So if I open up now my terminal and I paste, I get my exact same code that I could just easily run with curl. And in the search everywhere, I can look for even URLs. We support multiple frameworks, obviously Spring. I think my colleague Marco also had a session that might be highlighting this a little bit more. And then going to Spring, you see that we even have, for example, open an HTTP client, go to declarational usages, etc. So a whole bunch of things around web development and backend and server-side development that are also available. And then, as I mentioned, there's been a few sessions that have covered this in more detail, so make sure you check that out. And with that, I'm going to have to wrap up because we're already out of time. Just one last mention regarding the help file, that thing, again, that you never look at. I strongly recommend that you look at IDE Features Trainer that I showed you at the beginning, and also the productivity guide, which is not a PDF, but it tells you how many times and what you've been using and what you haven't been using of IntelliJ. And you can click through them and see the number of times you've used them, etc. Okay, so that is it from my side. Trisha, we've got a few minutes left for questions.
Yeah, so firstly, fantastic, as always. I think you did a great job as well of adding lots of the new features that I was not expecting you to add so many of the new features in there. So that was really, really cool. The related problems view and the inline watches. I'd actually forgotten about inline watches, and they're so cool, very helpful.
Yeah, they are.
We also had a comment that you said way back at the beginning that you just assumed that everyone was laughing at your jokes, and everyone on YouTube says they are laughing at your jokes and they do think that you're funny.
Oh, so. Look, do you see all this white hair? Do you know how much stress I've gone through this week just for my jokes?
And it's well rewarded because people did think that you were funny. We don't have loads of questions because the moderators have done a really good job of answering most of the questions on YouTube. So that's actually quite cool. One of the comments was, have we thought about creating and releasing our own keyboard to solve our keyboard shortcut problems? I like that idea.
Yeah, that's
like a really big one.
That's a good idea. Did you like my idea about the currency conversion thing?
Yeah, I put that on my list. Awesome. Raise a ticket for. I'll bet you any money. Actually, there's probably already a feature for that, but I do think it would be a good idea. We'll use it when I'm creating my my invoices. I'll use IntelliJ for that as well. And we also had a feature request of find a free shortcut, but then you'd have to find a free shortcut to find a shortcut for find a free shortcut.
Yes, and also actually talking about that, I forgot to mention the key promoter plugin. I think you've maybe mentioned it, that helps you, every time you use something with the mouse, it tells you if you want to use the keyboard, here's something you can press next time.
You make it sound really polite, but one of the reasons I like Key Promoter is because it goes, don't use the mouse, you stupid person. Here's the keyboard shortcut. And it does it so much, like, this is the keyboard shortcut. This is, you're like, okay, fine, I'll just learn it.
Yeah.
It's the best thing. And also I wanted to say, to my shame, I have not investigated package search very much, and I was blown away by that. I know, I'm so sorry, because you keep saying you should look at it. I'm like, yeah, I'll get to that. But it's really cool. I really like that.
It's okay. I won't take it personally. Not for a while.
So
anyway.
I quite often spend, like every time we do a new release, I also check the versions of all my dependencies to make sure they're up to date. And I did.
Now you could just do update all with package search and it'll do it.
I will be doing that. So package search looks really cool. That's excellent. What else? Let me just quickly see if there's any new questions coming in. Oh, there's always last minute questions. Something, Gradle. No. So I had a question for you, which is, what is your favorite keyboard shortcut?
Shift Command A.
Which is also Max's favorite keyboard shortcut, because he says he can't remember all the keyboard shortcuts.
Oh, so, okay. Yeah, no, I mean, that's the reason. Like, I don't memorize every single keyboard shortcut. So I just, mostly default to Shift Command A and just run it from there.
I was talking to the UI UX people yesterday about search everywhere, but because we were talking about how could search everywhere be even more helpful. But I think even though with search everywhere you can search for your keyboard shortcuts, Shift Command A is still better, right? Because you're searching for a command, not anything.
Yeah. I mean, I have to admit, I mean, I love search everywhere, but I've gotten so used to Shift Command A or Shift Command O or Shift Command Command O to go to symbol file type that I always default to that. And run anything now I do use quite a bit, because that is really useful.
I use that loads, because what I used to do is I used to navigate to the thing I wanted to run and then run it. So just run anything saves me at least one keyboard shortcut. So run anything is really cool. And I like like you were pointing out, I like the fact that you've got the little icon to show whether you're running Maven or Gradle or a run configuration.
Yes.
Yeah. Way
very
up there.
Useful.
One of my top 5 things. Yeah, and I was also talking to the UI UX people about muscle memory and about how IntelliJ IDEA, when they're thinking about the design of IntelliJ IDEA, they have to think about the fact that users like us don't know what the keyboard shortcuts are. We know it's this. You have to do this with your hand.
Yeah, it's like Quake, like
yes,
WASD. Like, well, why can't we just do everything around those 4 keyboard shortcuts?
WASD and what is it? Oh, now I want to play Quake. Thanks for that.
Quake World. Oh, we should do a Quake World tournament. That's what we should all do in our confinement lockdowns. We should like have this world tournament of Quake World.
I think we should implement it inside IntelliJ IDEA.
Quake World inside. I'm game. I'm game.
That's the next hackathon project.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. I don't think I've got any more questions. So thank you so much. It was, as always, an absolutely brilliant session. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.